All right, everyone, welcome back to the Knuckleball Experience Show. Today we're gonna be talking to Joe Zeller. Joe is the owner of USA Prime Zeller Baseball. He's got about 4 or 5 years of pro ball experience. He was with a Cubbies organization from 2010 to 2012, and then spent a couple years in independent ball throwing the knuckleball. So today we're gonna sit down and
Mhm.
chat with him and kind of learn from his experience throwing the pitch and go from there. Real excited. So, hey Joe, what's going on, man?
Oh man, I appreciate you having me for this. I love talking about the knuckleball, and it's something that more people need to be aware of and excited. I mean, actually, feel like recently it's been a lot more popular. So I'm excited to talk about it. I throw it really pretty much every day to our kids, and they always get a kick out of it. And so if you check out my Instagram, USA Prime Zeller, you'll see me throwing it on there, and the kids. They love it and hate it, just like everybody. They love it because it's fun, but then they kind of sometimes will hate catching it. So,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a fun bit.
yeah. It's the kids. Yeah, it's always
Mhm.
yeah, it's something to see. I mean, they're not seeing that day to
Yeah.
day. It's pretty exciting for
Mhm.
sure. So
Mhm.
awesome. I mean, tell me about your baseball program that you're running.
Yeah, so it started off just kind of like organically. So like, I guess I started coaching like close to 10 years ago in Texas, and then moved out here like, 7 years ago into Southern California, and just started giving lessons, and then people wanted me to coach teams, and then that just kind of grew just organically into Zeller baseball, and then we had a lot of success, and then we joined with a national program from that, and just growing from there. It wasn't like it was something I'd, oh, this is what I want to do. It just like people like, what I'm, the way I coach and stuff. And then I just kind of grew to love it because I love working with the next generation. I love being out in the baseball field. And so now, after having done it for so many years, I couldn't see myself really wanting to do anything else. So I feel blessed to be out on the field every day with the kids and passing on the knowledge, and just being a part of the next generation.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, they're pretty lucky. I know. I mean, for
Mhm.
me growing up, I mean, most of my coaches were, dads that they played high school ball and stuff, and
Mhm.
they're all great. I didn't have too many guys with your kind of experience. So, yeah,
Mhm.
the kid's pretty fortunate. You got a bunch of experience to share with him. So that's
Mhm.
awesome. So, I mean, I'll start it off how I usually start off. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe your first experience with a knuckleball? Like, who'd you see throwing it, and I mean, what were your thoughts and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of go back to like my very earliest memories of it. So I don't remember exactly the first time I ever saw it, but my first memories thinking about it is I must have been really into it as a kid. Maybe I probably was Wakefield. That's probably how everyone saw it, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool pitch, right?
Hmm.
But I remember at 12U going to Cooperstown, New York, and I was thinking, oh, the humidity here is going to make my knuckleball move more.
Yeah,
And so even from a 12-year-old, I was thinking in terms of the knuckleball, which is kind of crazy of like, oh, it's going to move, it's going to do whatever. And it was the same grip that I'm pretty sure I learned, Google Images, kind of like the way I probably looked at the way Wakefield threw it, just kind of behind the horseshoe there, and just threw it the same way since I was 12.
hmm,
And that's just how I threw it pretty much my entire life. And then I got, you know, from that age, but then I never really threw it in games because I was a or just a conventional pitcher, and I ended up throwing through high school, got into the 90s, college, I got up to 96, drafted as a conventional pitcher, and maybe it is, but always just kind of kept up with the knuckleball a little bit just for fun. And then first year of pro balls, when I kind of was like, hey, I want to throw this because I felt like, my arm wasn't up to 96. It wasn't like totally injured, but it just kind of small, wear and tear where I was more like 89. I was like, maybe I'm going to need the knuckleball. That was kind of how it started.
yeah. And it's kind of like, well, you look left and right, you're like, man,
Mhm.
everyone's throwing 90, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in a way, you kind of want to stand out in a good way, right? You want to.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an easy way to separate yourself, and well,
yeah.
yeah, it's so darn competitive. So
Mhm.
makes sense. All right, so yeah, so you were 12 thinking about some of the finer details about this stuff.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
12, thinking about it, for whatever reason, the knuckleball just really captured my attention. I think that, I was always a kid that was into science and kind of, into, like a bit of a nerd or whatever and a jock at the same time. So I feel
Yeah,
like the knuckleball is a really great way of combining it. And now with baseball, you see that that's with every pitch, where every pitch is like, oh, we're talking about the spin rate, we're talking about the Magnus effect, or whatever it is, the seam shifted wake. So every pitcher now can be a little bit more of a nerd, which is kind of exciting.
yeah,
Um, because pitchers tend to be guys that are a little bit more cerebral. If you're in the bullpen, you'll
yeah,
hear a lot of interesting conversations. The hitters are, on average, I would say less,
yeah,
but it just kind of, yeah, it captured my attention from a young age, the cerebral aspect of it, and then I just had like a natural knack for it, more
hmm,
so than my peers, and so it was always everyone's got a kick out of it, and
yeah,
it was fun for me. Just really liked doing it, and then it just kind of stuck with it a little bit, and then, like I said, so actually, there's another interesting story about where it kind of was like in my brain that I had like a really good one was, so like I said, I never really threw it in games.
hmm,
And like in college, I was up to 96. So I didn't really think that, oh, that was going to be my pitch, right? It was like, I have a knuckleball. But we had Jose Canseco come to my college. I was at the Master's College at the time,
okay,
and he was just there with his buddies playing softball, trying to break the softball, distance record or whatever.
yeah,
And he's talking to all of us, and then I told him, that I throw a knuckleball, and so he got all excited because I guess he threw like one inning in the major leagues with the knuckleball, and he was like, pumped up. He's like, "Oh yeah," and he like blew out his elbow or something,
yeah,
right? And he was all pumped up though to throw it with me, so he actually caught like a short bullpen
yeah,
with my knuckleball,
huh,
and he was throwing it to me. I was like, "Man, my knuckleball is way better than Jose Canseco's," and he pitched, one inning in the big leagues with it. Not like he was a great pitcher, but I was like, he
yeah,
was really into it. He was telling me, "Oh yeah, let's work on the knuckleball." I mean, that we never really like met up again, but he was like really into it at the time. And he's like, "Oh yeah, if you could throw 90s and throw a knuckleball, then you've got a good shot." So that was something else that stuck in my mind. That was probably like senior year of college, maybe.
hmm,
And so I was like, okay, so the knuckleball is something that's grabbing people's attention, even guys with like, tons of MLB experience. And then so it stuck in my mind. And then when I got to pro ball, like I said, I was 96, touching 96 in college. So it's like it was like 92, 94 sitting. So it was like above average at the time. Now that's nothing, right? That's like,
yeah,
average at best.
hmm,
But at the time, I'd say it's above average. But then it wasn't like I just tore a bunch of stuff, but kind of felt like messed up my shoulder to where I was just upper 80s.
yeah,
And I would still hit 90, 91, here and there. And like later in my, like the next couple years, I got a little bit higher up, 90, 91, but still it wasn't like the life I was used to on my fastball. So it just struggled making that adjustment. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is where I try it. And so first year of pro ball, I started throwing it in bullpens. I started throwing it in games a little bit. Um, and the coaches were, pretty receptive to it actually, at the time. And so basically they're like, okay, at the end of the year, didn't have like a great year because, my fastball, like I said, was kind of dead. And they're like, okay, work on that knuckleball during the off season. Maybe that's, the route we have to go.
yeah,
And that's what I did. And so honestly, if I hadn't have hurt my shoulder, I would have been way better with the knuckleball because it like kind of affected the way I could get up over it. So it was like always kind of like hurting here. And so it's just one of those things. I think every pitcher has all these issues with their arm that it's like, so I was dealing with that like anybody else, but doing the best I could in the off season to work on it with like a little bit messed up shoulder. And what I would do is I would like, so even in like when I was in pro ball, I would go to the center field during batting practice and I would throw against the fence just over and over and over. So like pick a target on the fence, like the padded center field wall, and it bounce back. Pick a target, throw it over and over and over, and then the coaches are like worried about my arm, but then for the most part they were like, hey, guys that throw the knuckleball have to be a little bit obsessive about it. And so that's what I was doing. So ultimately, they respected the fact that I wanted to perfect my craft, and this is what I was trying to do. So they're like, okay, we'll give you a chance. So then, like during the off season, spent a lot of time just going into my little league, throwing against the net there, just over and over and over again. When I had friends I could play catch with, throwing it, and I think it was that off season. I believe it was that off season where they got me in touch with Charlie Huff, and they got me the knuckleball mitt. I can't remember if it was that off season or it was the next. It might have been the next off season. But anyway, so it might have been the next one. So, but anyways, yeah, I go to spring training, and then they're like, okay, throw the knuckleball, and I had a pretty good day where it was just a lot of swing and misses, and then the pitching coordinator for the Cubs just comes up to me and he's like, look, he's like, your fastball maybe your stuff is just a little bit short, but we think you have a chance with the knuckleball. So this is the route we're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the pitching coordinator, Dennis Llewellyn. He had played with Charlie Huff and, knew him pretty well. And so he was actually very receptive to it. And we played catch a little bit where he would throw his knuckleball. This guy pitched, a little bit in the major leagues, like 20, 30 innings. And he was
Yeah.
probably in his 60s, 50s or 60s. Still threw a pretty darn good knuckleball, though.
Yeah.
And so we played catch with it a little bit. And I think he just was interested in the pitch and excited. And then the farm director, O'Neary Fleta at the time, he was all into it. And I remember he was like, saying like, Zeller, the knuckleball, we love it and stuff like that. And just getting me pumped up.
Yeah.
So that first year, that first spring training, threw the knuckleball. And so the year before, I was just like throwing a rookie ball, and then I got a chance to throw against double A hitters, and I did okay where I would get swing and misses and strikeouts against, like high double A guys, which is, it's going to happen if the ball's, moving. And I was throwing some good ones. And so they liked it. And then I stayed back for, I think it was extended spring training. And at the beginning, they were having me go 3 innings all the time, just getting a lot of innings in. And so they like were giving me a good opportunity with it. And the biggest issue was just like my arm issues with like kind of like not being able to really get on top of it. But yeah, they gave me an opportunity, and I ended up that year having like I think like a 1.9 ERA in like short season. Boise, Idaho started like their first game of playoffs, so they liked me a lot
Pretty good.
there, and pretty good.
Yeah.
And totally wasn't. I know that year it was like a lot of eye-opening stuff, because when people talk about the knuckleball, they think, and I thought, it's like, okay, I'm throwing this pitch over and over again that's like spinning almost zero. And I would be throwing a lot of just the worst knuckleballs you've ever seen, just cement mixers up there. It's like, and
Yeah.
they still ground out on it. And I'm like, okay, so I guess it doesn't have to be perfect. And then now, fortunately, we have high-speed camera, so we can watch Major League knuckleballers, and you see that most of them are not perfect. Sometimes they'll throw perfect. Wakefield probably threw the best as far as just no spin, like absolutely bananas. But you see guys that are throwing it harder in the 70s, and a lot of them are kind of tumbling in there. But if it's 74 miles an hour, a little bit of tumble, a little bit of movement, you're still not squaring it up. So I could still throw, upper 80s with the knuckleball. So I would be throwing it probably like averaging 73, 74. And so I would throw ones that they would tumble, still get a ground out. And then the fastball would just blow by them. So even though didn't feel ever like I was just on my game really, I still like was able to like have like a 1.9 ERA, just throwing cement mixer knuckleballs in there, and did pretty good. And I think that off season, that was when they got me in touch with Charlie Huff, and then also Mickey Janis worked out with me and Huff. And Mickey Janis got got a major league start with the Orioles, pitched 3 1/3 innings, and so yeah, Mickey Janis is a guy where this guy, it's like I said, to be a knuckleball guy, you have to be OCD obsessed. This guy this is all he did was baseball. I thought all I did was baseball, right? And this guy was very into it. Great guy. We ended up playing against each other a little bit, a few years later in indie ball. But he threw the ball hard, the knuckleball hard, and I thought at the time when I was working with Huff that mine was better. I had more. I think he had just was trying to learn it and I don't know if he had thrown it yet for a season in pro ball, maybe just like experimented. I had thrown it kind of for like a full season. So like mine was just kind of like more consistent, but he just threw it hard and it would tumble and just like move a little bit. And so, but yeah, mine was like okay, it's a little bit more consistent, but yeah, he threw it hard and ultimately he made it along because he just never gave up, just like loves pitching, right? Just loves baseball. And so great story for sure. But yeah, anyway, I worked with Charlie Huff, I think like 4 different times, and Mickey Janis, and that was a lot of fun. Charlie Huff, helped basically, he's shown me that he throws it kind of the same way, like behind the horseshoe.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I learned was kind of like I would get in my head about the knuckleball that I was always throwing it wrong, or I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And really, from what I learned with Huff and what I'm still learning now is that there's no just one cookie cutter way. Like you're going to hear all these different ideas of how to throw it, but it's like everyone's going to be a little unique. So like Huff told me, he'd be behind the ball right there and
Mm-hmm.
he would just it would still be kind of a throw and you want these 2 fingers to last on it and you're really staying through it right there. But he would tell me like Necro, obviously the best knuckleballer ever, would throw it more here, like with his palm kind of on it. And
Yeah.
he would feel more like he's like pushing it and staying through it. And Huff told me, he's like, you know, that doesn't really make sense to me, but he was the best ever with it, right? So, you know what I mean? And like Hoyt Wilhelm would throw his, I think, kind of like, here he's a, Hall of Fame knuckleballer, a little bit different. He looks like when you look at the footage, it's kind of like slinging it sidearm. So basically, yeah, everyone's a little different. Like Wakefield, I remember I had guys that would tell me, "Oh, this is what Wakefield's advice was," because they'd tell them about me, and he'd be like, "Oh, you're like closing a window shade like that," and so that would be Wakefield's cue to like stay behind it and come right down on it. I got to talk with Dickey a little bit over the phone. Never really met him. R.A. Dickey, he had the Cy Young year, like kind of when I was throwing it. And he was talking about just kind of staying through a lane, staying like down a hallway. So a lot of that stuff helped. But ultimately, like Dickey said, he's like, you can't really thrive with it until you're going to become your pitcher the way you throw it. You're not trying to copy Dickey or Wakefield or Huff. Like you're doing your style because everyone's going to be different. So that's like a lot of what I learned there. I also like Charlie Huff at the time told me, he's like, "Oh yeah, your knuckleball's more advanced than I thought it would be." So that gave me hope too, because like I was saying earlier, part of the whole thing is like you're like, "Oh, a good knuckleballer is they're throwing it without spin every time," and mine would kind of be tumbling a lot, and he was still impressed by that. So okay, so I guess like knuckleballers aren't throwing perfect knuckleballs every time, and so that helped me. And then like, yeah, the next year, I'm trying to think like, ended up throwing it pretty well in spring training and then went to high A. I think I was like extended for like a week. And then because they're kind of unsure of what to do with me because I was like, oh, I'm the wild card. I'm the knuckleball guy, right? So Then I'm there for a week. I'm like, oh crap, what's going on? And then they send me straight to double A actually. And then I pitch an inning in double A, 1, 2, 3 inning. I remember I threw one knuckleball like really slow, and the next pitch was just like an 89-mile-an-hour fastball struck him out.
Hmm.
And it's like a 1, 2, 3 inning in double A. So they really liked that. And then I was in high A and had a lot of success in high A.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went through a little streak of kind of not doing good where I kind of like I'd have trouble cracking my nails because it's Florida State League. So I'd like crack my nails because it would get so wet with all the sweat.
Yeah.
And then the nails become soft and they would kind of like you'd have issues with it, the ball slipping out. And so overall, I still had pretty good numbers, three something, but for a while I was just like dominating. And then got sent to low A after doing pretty good in high A, and then they made me into a starter. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good. They want me to be starting, and I started off just doing amazing. And I had like I think through my first 5 starts, like a 1.3 ERA, and then probably the highlight of affiliated ball for me was when I had a no hitter that they just took me out after pitch count basically, and I pitched like a no hitter through like 6 innings. I think like one walk maybe or a hit by I can't remember exactly. But then I got like interviewed by MILB, and I had some like articles in ESPN or MILB just about I'm the knuckleballer, and I was doing well. I was
Mm-hmm.
pitching no hitters through 6 and just getting taken out per pitch count, and so I was doing good. And like I said, the knuckleball is just never perfect, but it was just good enough. And I could, spot up, upper 80s pretty well. So, like, there was one game I remember my coach telling me that, like, out of 25 fastballs I threw, 24 were strikes. So I had good command of the fastball, 89, so I could throw that. So even if I'm 2-0, I can usually still survive. Like, I'm not just
Mm-hmm.
2-0 throwing a 70, just gonna hit it 2-0 after two knuckleballs, then 89 still kind of jumps on you.
Yeah.
So I was able to survive, even if it wasn't like at its best. But when it was really working, I would dominate.
Mm.
But then, kind of what happened is I like it was like the humidity or whatever. I'd throw my knuckleball right here,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of like on my thumb tore some skin, and that made it so I couldn't really grip the knuckleball the same way.
Yeah.
So if this is basically kind of like what I feel was the biggest thing for like, messing up my career is that I was had a 1.3 RA, I was just dominating. Then this happens and I'm just throwing all spinners. I don't probably don't throw one good knuckleball for the rest of the year. But
Mm-hmm.
because I'm still throwing 88, 89, and I'm able to throw spinners, which are basically they're going to be kind of like change ups, and they're like I would go out there and it would be like 5 innings, 4 runs. So it wasn't like I was just getting 1 inning, 8 runs, just getting hammered. But
Mm-hmm.
I went from a 1.3 RA to like finishing the year like at a 3.7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where what I should have done, got injured, and this was actually in the no hitter game. The last pitch of the game, I got injured,
Yeah.
or second of the last pitch. And I should have just been like, okay, I need to be out for a month until this heals. I think I
Yeah.
missed, I got start pushed back, and then I went back out there with my thumb all screwed up. Worst idea ever. So derailed my career because if I just finished the year right there, 1.3 ERA,
Yeah.
and what are they going to do the next year? They have to keep me. You don't just cut a guy with a 1.3 ERA,
Yeah.
right?
Damn.
So
Yeah.
next year, oh, go ahead.
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so next year, I finished with a 3.75, but I just got hammered at the end of the year. I was saying, every outing would be like 4 innings, 5 runs. Um, so then, that heals up. And then next year, I'm thinking, okay, hopefully they're aware of the fact that I finished the year bad because of this, but I was carving all year. I was in low A, high A, double A as a knuckleball guy, doing
Mm-hmm.
well, even with the thumb injury, doing well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I still had, you could look up my numbers. They weren't bad at all. Go to spring training and I'm like, okay, so the guys like me, the pitching, okay, everybody's gone. Pitching coordinator gone. The farm director gone. And it's like, That's the year Theo Epstein comes in. That's the year like they change out everything, right? And so I had a guy who's like the new farm director or field coordinator or whatever. He's like, "Oh, you're Joe Zeller, right?" Like I'm like, last year everybody knew who I was. I was like the guy, right? The knuckleball guy. And then this year the brass is asking like who I am. So I'm like, I'm screwed, right? I'm screwed. And if I had just absolutely shoved in spring training, then that probably would have been different, right? Like I would have maybe like made a team and gone to high A, but I didn't shove. I didn't pitch bad, but it was like very inconsistent because it's like it's tough, right? Um, but I would have games like I remember one game I threw the knuckleball and the catcher missed it, the hitter swung and missed. It was strike three, and their catcher's going back, and guy gets on base, and it's just a knuckleball can be a zoo, right?
Yeah.
So if we have the same brass from the year before, I think I'm still there because it's like, oh, I had done pretty good the year before and they all liked me. And so maybe I start out in low A, high A, and I'm a project, I'm working on it. But I'm like 24 or 25. That's like an infant for a knuckleballer, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, but anyway, they end up releasing me at the end of spring training. And and so then I go to, Frontier League. I think a lot of people were calling me and stuff. And then my whole thing is like, I want to be a starter. So I go to the Frontier League and then I end up having an incredible year um, throwing the knuckleball. And I was like, okay, so maybe this is not too bad of a thing because um, I got to be a starter and throw the pitch like 70, pretty much probably 60 to 80% of the time, depending on the game.
Mm-hmm.
And started the whole year, had an awesome year. Like a highlight of the year was first batter of the game, double over the center fielder, the next 27 outs in a row.
Really?
So that's what Ari Dickey said. He's like, knuckleballers do things backwards. So it's like a
Yeah.
backwards perfect game. First batter, double, and then I pitch like a perfect game.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so I mean, that was the highlight of that year for sure. I mean, and that's a game where it's just working, right? And like I said, when it's working, it's working. So you're just throwing it up there, and it's just like strikeouts or weak groundouts to the pitcher. Just nothing's happening against you. The whole game is dominated, and it's I don't know. It's like I probably had like a low three ERA because beginning of the year started out a little bit rough and then just had a streak of like 10 games just dominating. And then it was going so good. I get, the American Association, which is kind of the higher league. They're looking for, I think it was like the Rail Cats or whatever, Gary, Indiana or something like that. And they're looking, for a pitcher in their playoff run that's going to help them out, right? So they see I'm just dominating in the Frontier League. So then they get me, and I go over to Gary, Indiana, and I'm pitching like my second day there. So unfamiliar environment. Second day there, it's a American Association in Gary, Indiana, where it's like the stadium's full. It's like a big environment like that. We're facing tons of ex major leaguers. Definitely higher competition. And the knuckleball was a lot of good ones that day, but I would throw pitches. I remember one just smacks catcher straight in the mask, bounces away. Everyone's
Yeah.
advancing. And you know how it is. If the catcher's not catching it, if the conditions aren't right, and maybe the team's hitting a little bit, it looks terrible. So I pitched like maybe 3 1/3 and like 3 runs. I think I gave up a home run on a fastball. And it wasn't like 10 runs or anything like that. It was like, I don't know, I could look up the stats in the game, but it just kind of looks bad when you see a knuckleball guy where it's like you're not throwing every pitch for a strike, the catcher's not catching it, guys are advancing, and it
Yeah.
just doesn't look good. And then I get pulled out like in the fourth, and we end up losing the game. This is like their big playoff run. And then like the next day or the day after that, they call me in and they're like, look, um, we hate to say it. It's like, they're like, it's not like you weren't what you were advertised as. Like your knuckleball's moving like crazy, but we just don't even have a catcher that can catch it. Um, it's just this is, it's just like we're in a playoff run. We can't just have a guy go out there like, and it's just going to be chaos. And so they're like, we're releasing you. And I'm like, I was so mad. I remember and they're like, okay, so you're going to like, then they're leaving on a road trip. This is like true story that you can't even believe this stuff happens, right? Like, so they're leaving on a road trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck in their freaking clubhouse in Indiana. And then they're going to give me like a flight in 3 days. So I'm living in a clubhouse in Gary, Indiana, and I'm just calling my parents, ranting, screw this, like hate these guys. Because I'm not even allowed to go back to the Frontier League because that's the rule. So I'm in the Frontier League having the time of my life, love all my teammates, love everything. I should just finish out the season, probably like 4 more starts, finish out the
Yeah.
season. I love baseball. Maybe next year I go to the American Association, right?
Yeah.
Instead, I get called up to the American Association and they screw me. Okay. 1 start. And then my coach from the Frontier League was pissed. He's like, how can you do this? You're taking one of my players and you're just screwing his career. But that's what happened. That's baseball. It's a ruthless thing. So
Yeah.
I go there, not the best outing. And so then I'm in a freaking clubhouse in Gary, Indiana for like, a couple days, just going out of my mind, furious. And then I have to, they get a taxi for me. They freaking fly me I think I got picked up by the freaking, I don't know, I can't remember, but it was like another American Association team to finish out the year. And I pitched like, I think it was like 4 or 6 innings scoreless, as a reliever. Relieving is obviously like easier. So, relieved and did scoreless, did good. Um, and then I do remember my last out of that season was inside 2-seam fastball, jammed him, ground out to second base. Um, and I remember throwing it and just wondering, was that the end of my career? Because I was like, it just gets frustrating, man. Like baseball, when you're throwing the knuckleball, especially because it's just like, one day you're pitching a perfect game, and
Mm-hmm.
then the next day you're getting released because the catcher can't catch your knuckleball, or
Yeah.
you throw the best knuckleball ever, hits the catcher square in the face, and the
Yeah.
umpire calls it a ball. That happened all the
Yeah.
time. It goes just square in the chest. Umpire calls it a ball, and I'm just like, and it was bad because it's like you don't want to be showing up your catchers, right? Because they're doing the best they can. But when you're throwing it good, it's go just smash them in the face, and
Yeah.
it was so frustrating. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm done with this pitch. Maybe I'm just done with baseball. But then and then it's like, you're like in your mid 20s or getting into your later 20s, and it's like all your friends are moving on, married, and you're still just trying to chase that dream. So I was like doing Christmas lights during the off season, just, trying to figure out something to do, throwing the knuckleball, and then went to Amarillo the next year as a starter to throw the knuckleball in the American Association.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, it was like, first of all, horrible environment because you're in Amarillo, so that you're like at elevation. So you're just like at the biggest run scoring environment. You're going to give up like 10 runs a game.
Mm-hmm.
But started off like first 5 starts, like really, really well, like 2 something or 1 something ERA. Then ran into a rough patch, and in the American Association, I mean, the rough patch can get rough real, real quick. And I think through 10 starts, maybe, or 8 starts, I can't remember. My ERA wasn't terrible, but it was like the last 4 starts were kind of terrible. And the thing with like, if I was throwing 93 with, movement and pitches, and I'm struggling a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, you're still there, right? Because,
Yeah.
oh, it throws 93. But if you're throwing the knuckleball and it doesn't look good, they are like, get this guy out of here. And that's where you get a lot of sayings like, I can't remember who says, like Tommy Lasorda is like, you don't want to, it might be somebody else, but like, you don't want a knuckleballer pitching for you or against you.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff like that where it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for the other teams. And then it's frustrating for my coaches. But I remember like when I was in the Frontier League, Mickey Janis was in that league too. And I saw him pitch against us. And like I was saying, is like I thought at the time I was definitely better where I would throw the knuckleball 70% of the times as a starter, and
Hmm.
he was just relieving, and he'd probably throw it half the time. So he wasn't like full knuckleball. He'd be like, he'd throw like 89 and then throw his tumbler knuckleball. But Mickey Janis, never like he had plenty of stuff probably the same as me or worse, where you get cut randomly, you're just whatever, and he just kept going. And so I always have that in the back of my mind because I was like, the next year I had people calling me about playing, and I was like, man, I'm done. I'm tired of this. Could have just done what Mickey Janis did. Um, and it's like, you know what? Um, I decided to like, try to instead of just playing, build up my lessons, build up baseball programs, stuff like that. So I'm not just traveling all the time. I'm still throwing the knuckleball. I'm still doing baseball every day, so it's like my passion, but then I can't get like cut, I can't get screwed over,
Yeah.
you know, because it's like, yeah, it's like no, I mean, I tip my cap totally to Mickey Janis. Like I've reached out to, he's like, liked my stuff on Instagram, and I think he's like in Arizona. I'd love to have him out and talk to our kids because what he did is he just never gave up, right? And so that's what I would say to it's like my advice to someone throwing the knuckleball would be like, you've got to have your hobbies, you've got to have your like a good life, maybe like a good girlfriend that supports you or wife or something, because the mental trauma it's going to cause you is going to be so insane that you need that support system. So Mickey Jan, actually, I believe he had a girlfriend at the time, and then like he's married now. I can't remember exactly, but it's like maybe that was the difference, right? That's why I even tell my girlfriend now, it's like, look, if you're with me, I'd probably be pitching still because like I think I had one that it wasn't like great. And then I was single. It was like just, it was mental trauma. And you could talk to anybody that throws the knuckleball. It is mental trauma because no one really knows that much about it. You're going to go from no hitter to the next day. You're walking everybody, and
Mm.
coaches are not going to be as supportive. It's a tough thing. So I
Mm.
don't know. That's kind of my story. I feel like, um, could have kept going, but at the same time, um, I'm doing what I love, still doing baseball, and you just never know. Like I could have kept going and then just played 10 more years and never made it, right? And that kind of would suck. So, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, Joe. I mean, it's great to hear your career, because yeah, people don't realize like how hard it is,
Mhm.
and all the ups and downs you go through. It is not a
Yeah.
linear, it's not linear up or down. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Mhm.
darn roller coaster, and
Yeah.
yeah, Mickey, that dude's salty. In my mind, I mean,
Yeah.
he's a grinder. I
Mhm.
mean, you have to be a grinder. I feel like, I mean, Hoyt Wilhelm spent 10 years. Well, let me be more specific. From his first year of pro ball to when he broke in, it was a 10-year gap. He also served in World
Yeah.
War II and had shrapnel
Yeah.
in his butt. So
Yeah.
it, for the best, even it took him 10 years. So I think that's a testament of what it takes to excel at it. And those are the best guys, and it
Yeah.
took them a while. So that's something to take away from it. So yeah, I appreciate, the career, just going through all the different highs and lows that people, they just don't know, right? They don't have
Mhm.
someone like you, as their coach. Not everyone has a coach that spent
Mhm.
the experience, so it's something to be aware of. If you do want to
Mhm.
get into this, even if you throw 95, there's going to be a lot
Yeah.
of
Oh
highs and lows.
yeah. Mhm.
So I'm gonna go into more like the intricacies, of the pitch. Can you talk a little about your grip? Like, did you have a loose grip? I know you showed your grip. Did you have a tight grip, or what was how like 10 being a death grip, 0 being like real loose, falling in
Yeah.
your hand? Where were you on that? You think?
Oh, that's a good question. And I'm gonna be totally honest, it's like it's sort of the thing, and I don't know if I feel like this is probably true of most knuckleball guys, but I still
Yeah,
feel like every day I'm kind of like, okay, like this is how I throw it now. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're a hitter, you're like, oh, I figured out hitting, right? I
yeah,
figured it out, and then the next day you're in a slump again, right?
yeah.
So it's like it. I feel like I was tended to be around a 5, like
Yeah.
death grip. I would throw way too many that would just stick in my fingers and just tumble a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas like too loose, I probably can't really throw it accurately enough. I could throw some good ones, so it's kind of like at a 5-ish, and
Yeah.
I'm definitely like what Huff talked about. Like I'm throwing it, and like some keys for me would be like playing, like reaching out and touching the catcher's mitt. So it was like
Mhm.
and I saw just a video just a couple days ago of Huff talking about it, where you're just staying through it kind of like longer than like on a fastball, you're just going there. Knuckleball, you're throwing it, but you're probably trying to really stay through it just a few more inches. So you're not like twisting it as much. You're
Mhm.
really trying to make sure you're coming through the pitch. So
Mhm.
that was a cue for me,
Mhm.
was reaching out, touching the catcher's mitt.
Mhm.
Another thing was like when I was just a fastball guy, I would be like really turning and kind of like I would step open a few inches, and with the knuckleball, I really focused on landing straight and then my right foot coming down into like a fielding position.
Mhm.
And that's I would see mostly knuckleball guys. They had that kind of Greg Maddux, more compact delivery.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was a key for me too. So yeah, it was throwing it. It was like probably like at a 5, but just really trying to stay through it. Just kind of really staying through that lane, going through the ball. And yeah, just like 2 days ago, I'm gonna throw the knuckleball again tonight to the kids. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Um, but 2 days ago, I was throwing it. It was probably my nastiest it's been in a while to the kids. And
Mhm.
these kids are like, national level kids where they're dudes. They're like high school kids. They're dudes. And
Yeah.
when I'm throwing it well to them, it's just, and I'm not throwing it hard, just 55 miles an hour, and they're striking out. And my whole key was like throwing it and just staying through it that last 6 inches. And a couple things like just on the yeah, with how I threw it that were always tough for me. This is something I don't know if everybody's dealt with this issue, but this was like a very difficult thing for me a lot of times, was when I throw my fastball, I'm just competing. I'm just boom, or my curveball. And I could tell if it's a good curve or a bad curve, is kind of how it feels out of my hand.
Mhm.
Um, and but then when I would play catch with my knuckleball since the age of 12, I would always throw it and then watch it in the air to see if it was good or not, right? So the difficulty with me was I could play catch with it, and that because I did that since I was a kid, throwing it with like very little spin. But then when I got on the mound, I was in compete mode, just throw it and don't look at the pitch, right? So then it went from nasty knuckleballs, like I could throw it even to the catcher before the inning started, nasty knuckleballs as I'm watching it. Then the batter gets in there, and then all of a sudden I'm competing. So I'm not watching my knuckleball. So then my only kind of gauge to go on is the hitter's reaction and the catcher's reaction, right? And so you can still tell, like, if you're throwing a good one, but that's a totally different like mind game. So it's almost like starting over with the knuckleball. So I don't know if people realize that either. Is guys that can play catch with the knuckleball, that's just the basic step one. And then you've got to
Yeah.
compete in a game with it. Totally different animal.
Yeah, I went through that too, man. I mean, just like everyone is fun to watch, but yeah, you have to throw it so much where you're on the mound competing, and you don't have to
Mhm.
look to
Yeah.
know. In a way, like I
Yeah.
feel you gotta have such good
Mhm.
feel where when you release it, you're like, oh, it's pretty good. Oh, it's pretty good. Or hey, I got under it.
Exactly.
Hey, I got around it, and you got
Ex-
to be able to pick it up. But that requires thousands of throws of you in the outfield, throwing against the wall, throwing against with your
Yep.
buddy, throwing with your dad, throwing with your brother, I feel like in practice, big thing is you got to make your practice like you play. Like one thing I always preach on is get a batter in there, keep counts, because if I don't know about you, every time I compete, I got a batter in there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a different sight, and you gotta get in. I feel like you have to have the ability to not see the spin, but feel, okay,
Mhm.
that's good,
Feel
that's bad,
totally.
and adjust. Yeah.
Yep, and so no, that's exactly right, and so if I could go, if I could do it over again, first of all, I would tell the American Association when they tried to pick me up, I'd say, screw you guys. I'm a knuckleballer. I'm just learning my craft. I've got the next 10 years to learn this. I don't have to freaking
Yeah.
worry about it. You know what I mean? So I would have stayed there where I'm having fun, where I'm doing well, because a knuckleball guy, it's like, it's everyone's going to be different, but it's like you're saying, that's just such a big part of it is the competition with it is so much different than just playing catch that you really need the volume of innings, right? So you need to be in an environment where you're not like scared if I have a bad outing, I'm cut because you need the 200 innings. You need the
Yeah.
volume. So
Yeah.
what you should do is just be in a league where you can just thrive and just throw hundreds of innings. It's like I probably should have just played in a men's league in the offseason. That probably would have been the best, right? Because throwing against the wall is good, but if I was just in a men's league, throwing, I mean, that probably helped me because it's all the competition. Like you said, like now when I throw to the kids, I don't have to look at the pitch. I just throw it. And it's the same thing when I throw my cutter or my curveball. I
Hmm.
know it's good out of the hand. And then I see it the very last second and I see the hitter and the catcher's reaction. Now, when I throw my knuckleball, same thing. I'm
Yeah.
throwing it. Okay, it feels out of the hand. And then I see that. I don't need to look at it.
Yeah.
But that took years for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did is when I was taking this up, I was like, all right, I'm not waiting for the perfect opportunity. I'm gonna go play. That's why I played men's league. I mean,
Yeah.
we start in March, and then when I got back home from ball, they played fall leagues. I go play MSBL. I just pitched and pitched and pitched because just like you said, like you want to build that volume up where you don't have
Yeah.
to look. It's yeah. So experience. It's cute and all throwing bullpens and with your buddies on the
Yeah.
side, but number one, you need that experience with throwing with your buddies, but you need to back that up with experience. Pitching in men's league, it doesn't matter. No one cares what
Mhm.
happened in the MSBL or whatever local
Yeah.
men's league. Like no one cares. Probably gonna matter a little more when you're in Gary, Indiana, and you got I don't know St.
Mhm.
Paul in town, and you got a
Yeah.
scout for the Mets in the stands. Like that's when it counts.
Yeah.
Let's iron it out in the men's league, and yeah. So
Yeah.
pitch. That's I think a lesson there. Anyone trying to learn like go pitch. Don't be picky where you pitch. Go pitch, get your innings in. It takes a while, like you said. It takes some time. So get those innings in for sure. So
That I agree 1,000%. That'd be
yeah,
by far the biggest thing. I say pitch in the men's leagues, like leave your ego at the door,
yeah,
pitch in the men's leagues.
yep,
Um, it doesn't have to be like as perfect as you think. Like you're
mhm,
throwing tumblers in there, you're throwing whatever. Doesn't have to be perfect.
mhm,
Just get your experience. Like if you can throw, and first of all, being a real pitcher absolutely helps, right? So, because I was able to rely on Mickey Janis was able to get, I think he was drafted or signed as a regular conventional pitcher. Most guys, have a good arm, at least, or, so that all matters. But say you have a pretty good arm, you're able to throw strikes, and then that's what you want to do. Um, it doesn't have to be perfect at all. So just if you're able to throw it and it's tumbling in there and guys are grounding out, guys are getting out, then just if you want to do it, you're gonna have to stick with it, and it is going to be a long, long process.
yeah,
Where you'll have days where you throw some good ones, and you're like, "Oh man, I'm going to be in the major leagues tomorrow," and then the next day you can't even throw it for a strike, and hopefully you're able to like I said, have a hobby or have a girlfriend or a wife that you can just take your mind off of it because you don't
yeah,
want to be thinking about it all day.
yeah,
Um, you look at like some of the stuff like Mickey Janis, one start and he gives up, doesn't have a guitar. I was like R.A. Dickey. He learns a knuckleball for a number of years, gets his first start in the big leagues, and ties the record for most home runs in a game. Six jacks just have
yeah,
absolute moonshots off of him.
yeah,
I mean, I read his book and he was talking about it, and it's just the level of like depression that can cause you is crazy, and so it's a tough mental battle, and so that's why to be able to enjoy the ride and have like other things that you have going on, I think is key. Like if you're,
Balance.
learning the pitch, balance, yeah, where you're
Yeah.
learning the pitch, but you've got, maybe another business that you're doing, or you've got some side hustles, or if I was doing that probably, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing my side hustles or whatever, I've got something and I just keep playing, and then maybe, I would have been able to do that. But I was just like a guy that just obsessed, focused on that, and it just got so traumatizing. Um, and then yeah, ended up I love what I do now, and I get to throw it, like I said, every day. I'm excited to throw it to the kids today, because it's
Yeah.
just a fun thing.
It's fun.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, you can throw it for a while. So, can you talk a little bit about your off season and season throwing program in terms of what you did? Were you when you were warming up? Would you long toss knuckleballs? Would you only throw off the mound? Or I mean, what was that like? How would you prepare in the off season and in
Oh
season for
yeah.
knuckleball?
No, good question. Um, yeah, so I mean, I was like very much just OCD about it. So I would throw it playing catch a lot. And so for sure, yeah, guys, it'd have to be a special throwing partner, that wanted to deal with that. Most people didn't like it. But yeah, a lot of it too was just like regular, building up your arm strength. So I would do long toss, I would do all that stuff. And because you've got to make sure that your arm is still in shape. Because most guys that are able to make it, like Ari Dickey made the major leagues as a conventional pitcher, right? Um, Stephen Wright got up pretty high, I think, as a conventional pitcher, I think triple A guy. Mickey Janis was yeah, I can't remember if he drafted or he signed, but he got, signed as a conventional guy. So these guys are throwing 90s, and then when you see them, like you see Stephen Wright and he's like, mid to upper 80s. That's because he's compact. He's not just up there gassing it. I mean, he could still probably get it into the 90s, right? If he needed to. Who was the guy this past year with the Orioles that was throwing? I remember there was a guy like threw at least one start. I can't remember if he threw more than one. I can't remember, but there was a guy that was throwing it, and he was throwing like 94.
Hmm.
You know, so the guys that are throwing, like Wakefield was a guy that he averaged like 66 to 68 on the knuckleball, and his fastball is only like 74, but definitely not like what you always are going to see, because I think he had maybe the most consistent knuckleball I have ever seen. Like when you look at the slow mo footage of Wakefield, a lot of nearly perfect knuckleballs, a lot of half spin, one rotation. When you look at slow motion of like R.A. Dickey, you're seeing a lot of balls that they're 3, 4 rotations, but because he's throwing at 81 miles an hour, it just moves a little bit and it's a swing and a miss, or it's a chopper. And you'll see Dickey throwing some that, no rotations, but it's like when you look now, they have the data on like, fan graphs or different things where they'll show you the actual RPMs of pitchers. And then knuckleballers are still going to be a couple hundred RPM on average for their knuckleball, which is like way higher than you would expect, because it's like, I don't know. So it's like what, half a second or so to get to the plate. Um, so like I don't know how many
Times
rotations is a couple
times one
RP.
times 120. So if it's one
Yeah, so
rotation, half a second times 120,
the
it's
120.
a
So
hundred
yeah,
times.
most the average
Yeah,
knuckleball's probably a couple rotations,
yeah.
right? Yeah, so that's an average knuckleball, couple rotations. When I was like kind of growing up or whatever, I would have thought it would be like, half or one. Wakefield's one of the only guys where you consistently see half, one rotation. Maybe Charlie Huff too, because Charlie Huff would throw it slow. I don't see him in slow motion though, because I don't know if they had the cameras. But most of the guys that are throwing it hard, you're seeing a lot of 3 rotations, like which would be 360, I guess, RPM. Like, and it's tumbling a little bit, but it's still just nasty. And then, but you'll for sure see guys throwing it hard, and it's still like half a rotation, and that's where it's just like teleporting, right? You can't have no chance. And so, um, Yeah, so I mean, it's like if you can throw like it's a big advantage to be able to throw it hard. I think most of the modern knuckleballers are throwing it mid 70s. Um, if not even some guys hard. Dickey would throw his Cy Young season, his average was 77.1, and then his average velo on his knuckle, and then on his like games where he'd pitch like, one hitters, he was throwing like a ton of the knuckleballs 80, 81. So imagine an 81-mile-an-hour knuckleball, right? And then, they call it an angry knuckleball, where that thing is just turbo knuckleball, moves 2 inches and it's a ground out, or 1 inch, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be like Wakefield's throwing a floater that's just like teleporting like that. Wakefield's just chucking it in there and it moves. So he'll get, it moves 2 inches, ground out or whatever, but he'll throw every once in a while, he'll throw the ball at 81 with barely any spin. And that's where you get the ugliest swing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and but he had to go through a process of learning what worked for him. And for him, it worked throwing it harder.
Yeah.
I was always, figuring that out because I could throw it probably like 73, 74 consistently. That was probably my sweet spot. If I tried to throw it a lot harder, sometimes I would throw really good ones that were nasty at like 78, but then sometimes I throw spinners at 78
Yeah.
that would get hit. So that's something where, everyone's got to figure out what works for them as far as speed too, which is a long process to discover.
Yeah. Did you change speeds with your knuckleball? Like take some off, or you pretty much like try to find the speed that day that worked and you stuck there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Like, I would throw the slower one, and that usually did well. Like, sometimes just every once in a while, two strikes, or I just kind of like tossed it in there. And just it was really the speed difference. Like hitters just don't react well to like a slower one. So I did that, and that was good. And then a lot of times I would try to overthrow it with two strikes, and probably a lot of it was because I would see how much success Dickey had throwing it at like 81 miles an hour, and I'd be like, okay, I want to throw the angry knuckleball at 81 right here, and it probably was because I threw some good ones and would just get strikeouts. But it's probably better when I would get two strikes and I would just still throw the regular 73, 74, and just rely on the movement. But it was definitely a temptation for me to try to overthrow it, and then I would throw bad ones. Um, but it wasn't like every time you overthrow it, they just hit it, because sometimes you overthrow it, you get spin, but it still moves a little bit and it's a ground out. So I did change speeds, and it didn't like, I would say there was like probably some benefit, but I don't know if it outweighed the cons from it, right? Because when you see like, you see, when a guy's just on with his knuckleball, they don't even care about the speed. Sometimes, like you'll see, like Wakefield just throwing every pitch in there at like 66, just teleporting. He doesn't even
Yeah.
care. So I probably would have been better off just sticking with kind of like, this is the best, delivery, and just doing it every time. I feel like when I was absolutely on with it, for the most part, I stuck with just the speed that was best for the, killing the spin, which for me was probably like 72 to 75. And that was probably best. But I would try to, yeah, change speed sometimes. And I don't know if that was even good, but it was
Hmm.
something that I did experiment with quite a bit.
I gotcha. All right.
Mm.
Um, so I mean, what would you like? You talked a little bit about mechanics. I mean, obviously, you came up as a conventional pitcher. What were some of the bigger difference changes that you made from when you were a conventional pitcher to, hey, I'm a full-time knuckleball guy now? What I mean, maybe like two things that.
Yeah. No, good question. I think I was like touched on a little bit earlier. Like when I was
Yeah.
conventional, I would really think of it more as like, I probably had better mechanics when I like went to knuckleball, honestly, because it's like I'd say to me like the best mechanics for command, which I was a guy that was like even conventionally like low 90s, but that's not throwing 103 where you're just going out there and just lincecum or whatever, just blowing it by guys. So I think for guys that are going to rely a lot on command, movement, I think like Maddox type mechanics are just going to be your best, where you're finishing in a good fielding position, you're not just falling off, and that's kind of where you see knuckleballers are like Charlie Huff, like they're all right there, and then they're out front, and then they're finishing fielding. They're not falling off. So that was probably the biggest thing for me is that I would try to throw hard
Mm-hmm.
and I would fall off a little bit, and then that kind of like pulling off killed the knuckleball. Totally, you can't do it. It's like imagine Lincecum trying to throw a knuckleball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or someone like that, Jordana Ventura trying to throw a knuckleball, right? It's just not gonna work. So guys that are like Maddox probably could throw a better knuckleball than any of us, right? If he wanted to, he could probably do anything with the baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that kind of mechanics, and that helped my conventional pitching too, because like I said, I wasn't throwing 100, so it just, yeah, I would say that's just the mechanics that pretty much everybody should use, where you're going to spot up easier. You're not really just trying to go that 110%. You're in control, finishing fielding. You're able to spot up because
Mm-hmm.
you're not opening up. You're staying through your pitches. You're going to get more spin. You're going to have, so your spin rates on your four seams better. Two seam, you're staying through. So you're going to get really good life, like cutting people up inside if you're a righty. For me, it helped my breaking pitches a lot. So it really helped my mechanics, honestly, like a ton, was throwing the knuckleball. So that was the biggest thing, is being more of a, stepping straight at the catcher, being closed, finishing in a fielding position, thinking about being out front. So it's kind of like all the things that they tell you, for good mechanics is like the things I had to do.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would say like release point for me, I don't think that that's out front is the key. I would say as far out front and staying through it. I don't know if I didn't really have to like try to be more on top. It was more about staying through the pitch as long as possible. So it made me probably a little bit more on top, but that wasn't like my main cue. It was just staying through it, because there's like, Hoyt Wilhelm, you'll see throwing his sling and sidearm. I've seen Wakefield. There's like a YouTube video of him just like doing a sidearm one, because as long as you're through it, and then your last two fingers are staying through there, I feel like you're going to be all right with it. But most guys that are throwing it, you see their mechanics are really just trying to simplify, because it is about consistent being right there. And
Mm-hmm.
so you don't want to have a lot of variables. So you're not going to usually see knuckleball guys like switching up everything. It's usually just want to eliminate variables and just get through it. So I think release probably about the same as far as, like probably like three quarters, maybe a little bit more on top.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to try to get straight over the top, I don't think that helped me. So it's probably just regular release point, but just staying through it was the biggest key.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like Necro was huge on it. I mean, that's what he taught me. I call
Mhm.
it the Necro hop. And if you ever watch some of his video, he'd literally hop towards the catcher. And for him, that
Yeah.
was huge. That was huge for him. He says, you almost like you're thinking about hopping before you throw. And I
Uh-huh.
mean, everyone's different, right? That's what worked for him. But yeah, when
Yeah.
when you get in linear, it's easier to keep your hand through the ball.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the other thing, and I don't know if you agree, and we've talked about it with other guys before, but if the ball is coming to the catcher, I mean, you could kill spin, but if you're like Wilhelm, he did what's deceiving is he did, he was sidearm, but he was still able
Yeah.
to stay through it where the ball, it seems to me, the ball is still coming at the catcher symmetrical. It's not like it's coming across one dimension.
Yeah.
It's symmetrical.
Mm.
He probably had maybe a little spin on it, but it's symmetrical, so it could break into a righty or
Yeah.
away from a righty, and that's key because if you're coming across like, and this is something I've struggled with my whole career is staying through because I would throw balls
Mhm.
that didn't spin, but hitters would spin on it, or they spit on it because it's like one
Yeah.
dimensional versus
Yeah.
staying linear right to the catcher and then being unpredictable. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's key. All right, pretty cool. What would you what for say, I don't know, a high school, let's just say a college kid that was in your shoes, so you got a college kid, he's throwing 85,
Mhm.
he's probably not getting drafted, but man, he wants to stay in the game. He's got a good knuckleball. What kind of
Yeah.
advice would you give to that kid? He's a senior. He's 84, 85, good pitcher, not getting drafted, really good knuckleball, wants to go to the next level. What piece of advice would you give him?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say I would say so there's like a couple things where it's like if you it's like you usually people know like if they are, pretty good with the knuckleball because you'll get a lot of feedback. People are like, "Oh, I don't want to play catch with you. You're missing gloves. You're hitting guys in the chest." If you're doing that consistently, not just like one out of your whole life, but like
Yeah.
then you've got a chance with it. Um, and so if you have a chance with it and you just really want to stay in the game, definitely don't, think that you don't have to be a pitcher, keep up with your arm stuff and, all of that. But I would say the biggest thing is you just got to get the volume of innings because no one is really going to be lining up to be like, oh, yeah, we want to develop a knuckleballer. So you're going to be in college and then you're gonna like, what do you think you're gonna do? Go to a independent team and be like, oh, I want to learn the knuckleball. And they're like, no, we're trying to win now because if we don't win, I lose my job and then I'm on the street, right? They don't care about you developing your knuckleball. And so that would be the thing where you have to realize nobody cares about you developing your knuckleball. So maybe you go to an indie league and you use the knuckleball as like an out pitch, but you're still developing it, right? So the knuckleball can be a great off speed pitch. So you don't have to transfer 100% to like, oh, I'm a knuckleball pitcher right away. So if you're like developing it, then and that's like the route you want to go, start using it as a secondary pitch. Like the Orioles guy that pitched this year, it was like his third offering, but it was a good pitch. So start developing it. Oh, this is like that's kind of what Mickey Janis did. Like he would still throw 90, he'd throw his slider, and then he'd throw his knuckleball maybe like 40% of the time. But he was in the game, able to keep developing it. And that was the biggest key for him. And so that's what I'd say. So, get it mixed in there. But then if you're gonna play indie ball, but then the off season, do your arm stuff, but then just play in a men's league. Get volume of competitive reps, like all the stuff of in the bullpen and stuff that is good. I'm not saying don't do that, but you need the competitive reps, whether it's a men's league or you find a baseball facility where they do live at bats. But you need the competitive reps where, like you talked about earlier, you're not looking at your spin, you're not looking at because you're going to have to get to the point where the knuckleball is just your pitch, right? That's
Hmm.
just what you throw. You get up there, you grab it just like you would, like, say you're a sinker ball guy, right? You don't go up there, oh, okay, like you just grip it and rip it, right? That's your pitch, you throw it. And the same thing's got to be with the knuckleball where I just grip it right here and I just let it rip. And if you're up there like, oh, I've got, like it's just kind of a weird pitch, you're babying it, it's going to be very hard to get to the level that you could. So it's just the volume. Like you're going to need hundreds of innings. You're going to need, the bad outings where you figure out, okay, what wasn't working for me, what screwed that up. You're going to need the good outings. You're going to need all that feedback. So if that's really your goal, then start it off as a secondary pitch if that's all that you can. And so that way you can play competitive innings like in an indie league and you still have a place to play and then get your repetitions and volume where you're throwing it more often somewhere. And then hopefully if you go from it's a 30% pitch to the next year or whatever, it's 50%. That's what Mickey Janis did, right? So I've seen it kind of help. That's kind of what I did too. But Mickey Janis was like, it was his like third pitch, second, third pitch. And he threw 90 miles an hour. He was a good pitcher and then he'd throw it. And then over time, it just became better and better.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's pretty good advice. I mean, I don't know. I
Mhm.
forget who I was talking to, but I was just like, "Hey, if you want to, work on the pitch, go find the worst team on the league or worst pitching staff on the league, and hey, man, can
Yeah.
I come pitch for you guys?" Because it's like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, go out there, go pitch." Like they're
Yeah.
not
Hey,
like,
well, That's exactly what I'm saying is like men's league or yeah, find the
Yeah,
crappiest team.
yeah,
Don't put pressure on yourself to just dominate or because you're not going to find a good team that's like, oh yeah, we want to get a knuckleballer on our staff. Like you
yeah.
got to find the worst team and you just got to
Get in it.
enjoy going out there, getting the innings in.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's good
Mhm.
advice, and
Mhm.
yeah, bridge the gap between messing around before the game to getting the
Mhm.
umpire in there, tight zone,
Yeah.
bases loaded.
Mhm.
You had 5 errors this past inning. How you going to deal with it
Yeah.
now? Kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
gotcha. All right. Well, Joe, is there I mean, we went over a bunch of stuff. Is there anything else you feel like I don't know that you would have liked to have heard when you first started throwing the pitch competitively that you wish someone maybe shared with you that you know now?
Mm, yeah, no, I mean that's a good question. I mean, I'd say I'd say the biggest thing is that honestly, like what you're doing is great because a lot of it is like having a community helps because it's such a lonely, isolating pitch in a lot of ways because you're just the only guy in your organization, you're the only guy on the team doing it. Um, no one really understands kind of like you're gonna have days where you go out there and you can't even throw a strike and you're depressed about it. So yeah, I'd say that the whole advice of like, finding the worst team or pitching in the men's leagues or just finding just live ABs and just getting volume of innings. Like, don't really think that you've even scratched the surface until you get a couple hundred innings under your belt, and that's just scratching the surface. Like, you don't even know how that pitch is going to develop,
Mm-hmm.
and then the knuckleball is not a 2-3 year process. It's something that's like 5-10 years minimum, right? Some guys it's going to take longer, and so you're not going to be like graduating college and then going on like a 10-year journey with the knuckleball if you don't have other stuff going on, right? So still try to have a life, right? That maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're do a business or maybe you've got something online and you got a girlfriend and you're getting married because it is going to be a journey. And so the knuckleball, be prepared for that. Don't think because I was obviously hoping it's like, okay, this will be a couple year thing. And that's just not reality. But Mickey Janis's story is a little bit that's just kind of the way it usually goes, right? It takes him,
Yeah.
10 years of grinding to get a little bit of a shot. R.A. Dickey's story, and he was already a major league pitcher, and it took him years and years to get back. Like you said, Hoyt Wilhelm, 10 years. Charlie Huff, I think it wasn't after he learned it, it wasn't that long at all. It was like, but
That's
that's
he's a
phenomenal.
rare. He's rare.
Yeah.
He's rare. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
going back to what you said. Like for me, I had I had some really good guys in my circle. Like I don't know if you know Joe Gannon. Anyway, he's got
Uh-huh.
no hitter in the anyway 10 plus years pro ball, no hitter in the Atlantic League, one or two. Anyway, stand up dude. Anyway, I get released. And I call him up, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, no big deal. We'll get you on a team here soon." Like just to hear those words, like if you don't have a support system, it's like it's pretty hard. But I was fortunate
Mhm.
enough to have somebody that pitched at a high level, and yeah, I called him up. He's like, "Oh, hey, no big deal. Well, you get on a team here soon." Like it, like kind of bouncing back to what you said. It's important to have a good support system. Like yeah, if you see a turtle on top of a fence post, he didn't get there himself. So what I mean is, it's good to have a good support system. Like your parents or your girlfriend or some coaches. They don't even have to be a knuckleball guy, but it's important to have somebody that's gonna help. You're not always gonna be at the top there, and yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty important. So, and building like
Yeah.
infrastructure, right? You gotta have a
Yeah.
part-time job if that's all you're thinking about. Like you drive yourself crazy. So it's good to have other hobbies. Making money, doing other things, whatever it is, and being
Mhm.
versatile because um, well, yeah, it'll drive you crazy, and you have an outlet and balance, just like anything in life. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
you're doing, knuckleballs or whatever in life, but balance is key,
Mhm.
especially with this pitch. So,
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think, like, what you said about, "Oh, I got released," and it's like, "Okay, no big deal." I mean, that's, like that's one of the biggest keys to realize if you're gonna try to make it in baseball, or really just honestly anything, is that
Mhm.
a lot of people are gonna say no, a lot of people are gonna release you. I got released, only a couple times, and maybe that's why I didn't play longer, because it's like, how many times, I don't know the answer, but how many times has, the average major leaguer been released? Probably quite a few times. How many times has Mickey Janis been released? How many times, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's always a lot, and it's part of it. Like, you have to just accept the fact that if you're a knuckleball guy, you're going to be on a little bit of a journey that's different,
Mhm.
and you might get released
Mhm.
5 different times.
Mhm.
Um, you're kind of like, you're on your little adventure that, most people, they might not understand, but it's like, but nobody wants to, if you're trying to have an interesting conversation, the knuckleball guy is the person to talk to, because they've had an interesting life, right? So it's going
Yeah.
to be an interesting life, and you're going to have stories, and that's something to realize, right? You're not on just the normal path. You're on a journey that you're going to be stories for a lifetime, and stay on it. I would say, like, I'm happy with my career. I could have kept going a little bit longer, and I would say definitely give it a number of years. And if you've got a bunch of stuff going on where you're happy in life, then just go. Why not go as long as you can, right? Because it's going to be super interesting stories, and you never know what'll happen. But my this is my philosophy. And I tell the kids, it's like, keep playing baseball. Um, as long as it's making your life better. So it's like high school, you're cool in high school, right? Everybody loves you. So obviously you want to play baseball. College baseball is the best thing ever. Keep playing college. Getting drafted or signing is amazing. For sure, do that. It gives you, tons of benefits. My fear was that I would be the guy that's 38 years old, that's just playing an indie ball and didn't have anything, right? But now looking back, it's like, if you can find a way to play 10 years where you're in the minors, you're in indie ball, but like we said, you've got a support system. You're building up, like, your baseball academy while you're playing. Cause now I look at guys that they retired in their 30s, but they had been building all this stuff while they were playing. Then that's a great career. So it's like you're playing, and it's making your life progressively better. But that's a big key, is you have to have other stuff going on so that you're not out there. I feel like, yeah, maybe I didn't have the support system where I was out there just kind of feeling like, maybe I don't, it's a weird thing, man. Playing, on those buses, you're out there for hours, just weird. And like, I had a friend that, like, same thing. Like, this guy was, just a journeyman. He ended up making the major leagues for a month, just a journeyman. And it is a weird, lonely thing. And so, yeah, you've got to find a way, have a support system, have a life, because it is a journey. And if you want to give it the 10 years, you've got to make sure you've got other stuff going on. You don't want to be 38 and then just like, oh, this is the only thing I've done. Like, have your baseball stuff built out, like academy, have something, have a family, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's less pressure. It's like, I got injured. All right, I'll just go do
Yeah,
this. And I
exactly.
think that's going to help you. It's going to take that edge off, and you're not going to be so tense. I mean, still
Yeah,
competitive, and you want to be successful. There's pressure and stuff, but yeah, kind of takes
yeah.
the edge off. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's pretty good advice. And like you said, like part of this project goal is just like to build a network. So like there's somebody listening that lives in Southern California. Like hopefully they'll reach out to you, be like, hey Joe, man, like I really want to start doing this, and you could build a rapport, and like they could be mid-season have a bad struggle, and then they could text you, and you'd be like, hey dude, like hey, been there, hey, try this or try this, like that makes a
Yeah.
difference. You know what I mean? Just to kind of get you,
Oh, yeah.
and RA talked a lot about it, in his book and stuff, about having that support system with Charlie and stuff, and him being,
Mhm.
sounding board and encouraging. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely, yeah. And knuckleball guys, it's just such a small fraternity. They're all going to be helpful. I mean, Charlie Huff was, helpful with me and excited. I mean, I see him on Instagram, just always giving good advice about it because it's just, it's a small little group of people that have done this or even tried this, and we're all rooting for each other because it's an art form that you want to see continue because it's always just yeah, it's like having thrown it, like, and I see a major league guy or I see a guy on TV, and then you can just get in their head a little bit more than maybe the average person of like the struggle of it, like, and it's just, yeah, it's like we all kind of feel a little bit of that camaraderie because of that. It's one of those things, and it's yeah, definitely great to have a network and to be able to talk to other people that did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's for me at least, it was helpful. I didn't feel
Mhm.
alone. I was like, all right, kept,
Yeah.
helping me out through the tough time. So, all right, cool. Well, Joe, I mean, is there anything else you feel like sharing? Somebody that, is thinking about throwing this, or um how can they get in touch
Um,
with you if anyone has any other questions, they want to.
Yeah, no, the best way is, my numbers on Instagram. So just if you want to text me or whatever, or just DM
Yeah,
me, but Instagram is USA Prime Zeller.
yeah,
And, I'll probably start doing, I don't know, baseball here is just blowing up so much. I do
yeah,
clinics and camps and stuff. I might even, do some knuckleball stuff because there's always interest. The kids are always interested in it. They're always fascinated by it. But yeah, USA Prime Zeller. Um, Check that out. And I'm like posting basically stuff every single day. And then, like I said, the just yesterday I was doing a knuckleball video that's I think it's probably at 7,000 plus views now.
yeah,
Um, Let me see what it's at right now, but yeah, it's at yeah, 7,300. So it'll get like 10, 20,000. So I don't know. It's like the knuckleball. I was actually thinking the other day, it's like I might get like a high speed camera just because I'm like very encouraged with like the Instagram that we've been doing. Like we've been getting some videos like 50,000 views, and the knuckleball one, it's like maybe, there's like a really big market for that. It's just kind of seeing, that type of stuff on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that would be the place. And then, just like basically I'm a guy that played baseball for the love of the game, like I feel like guys that made it to, a decent level, usually they played it just because they love baseball, and it's like that's what I tell my girlfriend. It's like, yeah, guys that maybe they just played like some high school, a lot of times they're trying to be cool. Guys that played for a long time, played pro, like they just like the game,
yeah,
and so I don't know. I wasn't ever trying to be cool playing baseball. And like obviously it helps you in life being cool, but it's like I just love the game. So I do it every day because I just love it.
yeah. Most people wouldn't say, "Hey, what would you do if I say to you, here's $50. I want you to
Yeah.
jump on this Greyhound. I want you to go 10 hours, and I want
Hmm.
you to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a plastic knife that's probably going to break on you. You get peanut butter on your hand,
Yeah.
and I want you to, pitch. Sometimes pitch in front of 50 people, and the
Yeah.
lights aren't great. And I want you to suck that day, get hit around the park, and then show up the next day with a good attitude. You interested?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
oh
And
you're
50,
not okay.
yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that's all the case, but I'm saying that's the kind of stuff you go through. Like most people aren't going to do that unless they love the game. So yeah,
$50 is generous. I mean,
per,
I've
per
definitely
game,
played.
you know what I mean. At the lower levels, I'm not saying that's all levels. I'm just saying like starting out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's
Yeah.
what I mean. I played with definitely where I'm making $1,100 a month or 1,300 a month. So that's like,
Uh,
they take taxes out of it. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm making $40 a day. To like you said, I'm on the bus, like sometimes overnight, sleeping on a bus, PBJs. Um, you're just yeah, you're spending your life out there in the middle of Timbuktu, small towns where you've got 50 fans that are all drunk. They don't even know what's going on and they're heckling you and stuff. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, you got to love the game. And I feel like that's part of what makes me yeah, it's like I don't regret too much because I am just still doing baseball every day. Like I'm 36 years old, and after this, I'm gonna go to like I have a couple main loves in life. Like ever since I was young, I loved working out. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. That was my book since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Love working out. And then I just loved baseball. Started doing that when I was a kid. And then I'm 36 and I literally just do the same thing as I did when I was 12. So it's not a bad life, so
Yeah.
things could be worse, right? Um, and then fortunately, yeah, like people just love baseball. So it's like you get to do it and people like to talk about it. And, like I get in an Uber and a lot of times I just want to talk about baseball or whatever. So it's yeah, so if you're a baseball player, um, keep playing because it's America's pastime and
Yep.
people, like I said, it's interesting. It's always something to talk about. Like when I'm like in meeting new people, it's kind of just like people just want to talk to me about it. And that's just like what I get to do. I'm around a lot of great ball players still and trying to get them to, reach their potential. So yeah, no, I think anybody that got to play baseball at a higher level is so blessed that we got to do that. And so obviously, no matter who you are, unless you're Derek Jeter or Mariano Rivera, you didn't retire exactly the way you wanted to, probably, you know, but that's like 99.99% of people
Yeah.
don't get that. But we still got to realize like how blessed we were, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's an incredible life to be around the game and to still have it. And um that was, yeah, that's my life. And that's why it's just so much fun. You can see I just love talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome,
Hmm.
Joe. Man, I really appreciate it, dude. I think guys, you're gonna be able to take a lot from it and
Hmm.
talking about a lot of insider stuff, you don't really hear I don't know, I guess you can't read about all the time and
Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to talk about.
yeah,
Um, so I had a nail hardener that I
yeah,
would get from the store.
yeah.
Um, yeah, kind of like a polish that was like for nail hardener, and then I got a nail file
Mhm.
that was like a crystal nail file, and I
Mhm.
would try to have my nails the exact same way every single time just to eliminate like an extra variable, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So that's something I forgot, but that's something I learned from other knuckleball guys is they were very particular about their nails. Definitely want them to be hard and everyone's different. Like some guys they'd be eating all this, special biotin pills to get hard. I would do that too. I would try everything to get hard nails, and I still had issues with it. Um, but that's something you're gonna have to think about too. So that's something you could reach out to, like guys like me or you or whoever about. Hey, I'm having a crack in my nail, and we're like, oh yeah, yeah, you need to do this, do this, do this. Whereas like someone else would be like, they have no idea, right? They're like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Mhm.
know Joe Nico got in trouble for his file in his pocket,
Right? I read that.
but
Uh huh.
yeah, I'd keep a file with me. I wouldn't
Mhm.
I I would always keep it, and I would do, once I started throwing, I would keep it with me and make my final adjustments before my start or whatever. But
Yep. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I would keep one. I get a bunch of them. That way, if I,
Yeah.
they're cheap, just keep them around. So yeah, that's a big thing because it's a feel thing. If
Mhm.
if it's too long, it's too short. Well, it's too short, you're like, it's too bad. You you can't grow it, but if it's too long, you can make those final
Yeah.
adjustments at the
Yep. So you
field.
gotta find what works, yeah.
Yeah, don't leave it at your house. Put it in your bag. Put a couple in your
The way
bag.
I liked it is it would feel, and like my nails are pretty good right now for it for
Mhm.
me, is like it kind of feels like my fingernail and the tips of my fingers are just at the same, like it just kind of boom feels like they're at the same. It's not like my nails
Mhm.
are digging into it. That
Mhm.
doesn't, I don't like that because it's like my nails are gonna bend.
Mhm.
It's gonna be like I don't have a feel, my nails are gonna break.
Mhm.
But if my nails are too short, then it feels like it's just skin on the ball,
Mhm.
and that's gonna hurt, and it's I
Yeah.
don't so, yeah, kind of like a feeling of, medium length, not super short, but definitely not super long. So that's what worked for me.
Yeah. 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 It's a feel thing, and yeah, just keep a
Mhm.
ball with you, and you throw enough of them, you'll figure out what's right and what's wrong. Go throw a million
Yeah.
of them and come back to me. You'll probably know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Good stuff. All right, Joe, man, I appreciate your time, man, and yeah, let's stay in touch, and hopefully we'll get some more guys out there, working on it, and throwing on the mound soon.
Absolutely, man. No, I really, really appreciate it. This was super exciting, and
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting this content out to like my kids and parents, and they can kind of learn from our stories and what it takes to make it,
yeah,
especially as any type of player.
yeah, yeah. True. All right, Joe.
Mhm.
I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, all
Have a
right,
good one.
awesome, man. All right, sounds good.